So this is a hierarchy that Maslow created that says we actually have to fulfill certain things before we can actually go on and do other things. So if our physical survival isn't okay, we're not going to try to belong to a group. We're going to try to survive first. We're going to try anything we can to get food, to get shelter, to get clothing, to get all other things. But once we have those things, we'll actually belong to a tribe. Okay, we'll belong to a group. And I call that tribe. I call that a small we space, okay? And supposedly after, and this is how I've changed it, after you belong to a group, okay, because in a group or in a tribe, you don't exist as an individual. You exist as a function of the tribe. We actually don't recognize this in our culture because there are really no true tribes left that haven't been exposed to Western culture. Okay, so recognize that belonging to a tribe at one time meant you were a gatherer. Okay, you were the wartime chief. You were the peacetime chief. Okay, it didn't matter where you were. Okay, and in a tribe, someone acting as an individual is dangerous. Because someone who thinks they're better than others thinks they have power over others and will try to take over the group. So tribes actually have shaming mechanisms. So shaming goes back into the tribal culture, which brings people back into their place, a perspective of the tribe. So I'll give you an example. A man walks in with a huge deer. Oh, I caught a big deer. And everyone will say, wow, I caught something that was 3 times that big last week. Or, wow, that's the tiniest deer I've seen all the time. It's a slight shaming, but it's to tell the person don't get a big head. Because people with big heads get very dangerous. Because power, as you know, can get, power associated with arrogance can get out of control very quickly. So humans for a long time was a tribal culture. Okay, and I call that a little we space. Why? Because here's my tribe, but that tribe over there is a different tribe, and they're different people, and we'll fight. Okay, there wasn't a sense of congruity of we're all human beings. It's I'm this tribe, they're that tribe, they're the enemy. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a little bit. Sometime around 10,000 years ago, a different experiment started happening. It's called city-state, but also what happened was there became a sense of identity. Who am I, independent of the tribe? And for 10,000 years, this went on, trying to separate ourselves, right? There were kings and queens in which there was a ruler or someone leading. And then America came along, which is the ultimate experiment in individuality. People could come here and be exactly who they wanted to be without anyone else telling them who they could be. Okay, this is the culmination of 10,000 years of evolution of consciousness, trying to experiment with a sense of individuality. Because believe it or not, as normal development, if you don't have a good sense of individuality, it's very hard to let go into a very large we space later on. And I'll talk about a little more about that. Okay, so if we don't feel individual, if we go into a larger we space later on, we'll lose our sense of who we are completely. We'll feel annihilated. Okay, so we have to have a strong sense of I first before we can lose it. Okay. And unfortunately, in our society, this sense of I doesn't work very well because we still have, unfortunately, a lot of tribal influence, right? We had 40, 50,000 years of tribal culture going on before we decided to go into the city-state culture, okay? But we're moving toward this next level, which is service to others, which is really the world tribe. There's only one tribe here. It's human beings, okay? There's only human beings here as a human species, okay? There's not Americans and Russians. There's not white or black. There's human beings. Okay, that's the big we space. Okay, and as we go into this, we'll find there's 2 layers to that. One is we recognize that we're just human beings. And the next layer is that actually we become, in a sense, a global mind. And you'll see how this can happen in a few minutes. But in this, the dysfunction here is, and think about everyone here, I don't want to piss people off within my tribe because it will exclude me from the tribe, right? I'm always monitoring what I say to others. I'm always hedging my words because I don't want to say something wrong. Because if I say something wrong, they might get mad at me and then kick me out of the tribe. And being kicked out of the tribe is the biggest fear. So think about how every day you're like, oh my God, I'm walking on eggshells right now. I have to watch what I say. Oh God, I want to say this, but if I say this, it's not going to go well. This is one of our biggest, this, believe it or not, is a milestone on our path as we go through the development of our awakening. Okay, and I'll tell you what that is later on. Okay, so what happens early on? So let's think about this. We start off our physicality really well. Okay, we start going on, we're running around, we're playing, we're doing all this stuff. And we start expressing our emotions. Ah! My father, big boys don't cry. You're weak if you cry. Stop it. Okay, other people get, you can't get angry. You do not get angry with me. Okay, stop being angry. Our parents, and actually society itself, has no emotional intelligence, very low. Okay, so we really don't get good emotional mirroring. Okay, so what happens is we sort of skip emotional and we go right in mentality. So what happens at the age of 4 or 5, we're dumped into school. Before really our minds are ready to handle that type of thing, we should be working on our emotions. So I put this below you. How many actually here have explored the difference between enraged, wrathful, livid, irascible, infuriated, furious, fuming, inflamed, boiling, angry, indignant, incensed? All of these are different senses of what we might just label as anger, right? Where would you put bent out of shape on that scale, right? Where does bent out of shape fit in between exasperated and heated? I don't know. It's something that we have to explore. But most people don't explore, and this is just for anger. So think about the things for bliss or joy or happiness, right? Ecstatic, pleased, glad, right? You can start thinking, we don't explore these, but we should actually know these. These are actual subtleties. And having the ability to discern these actually can say, this is what I'm actually feeling. So most human beings, if you ask how you're feeling, they'll say, I'm okay. Or if you say, oh, I'm just sad. Really? Are you really sad? Or they say, well, I'm actually grieving. Well, that's a big difference from sad. But most people just say, I'm sad. They don't have this scale to work from, and most of us have not worked on it. So I don't have that ability to discern or discriminate what I'm actually feeling, and most people don't. Okay. And so this is one thing. Okay, now we have to suppress a lot of our emotionality. So now we're starting to get into how we start really getting this disconnect, right? I have to disconnect from my emotions. They're not allowed to be there anymore. Okay, so here's a real complicated one. This is one, give me a second to go through this and see if we can get this all. So think about this. Everything that grows on this planet is part of something called the biosphere, right? Everything is, so evolution occurs within the biosphere of the planet, right? Trees, plants, grasses, all the animals in the sea, the water, everything is part of this biosphere, okay? And so we might call that a large, Sheldrake would call this a large morphogenetic field. It has a lot of definition to it. If you actually take out a species, you'll notice that nature tries to come up with another species to replace it. Over time, that species will be replaced because it fills a gap in this known sphere of influence, okay, this domain of physicality, okay? About 40, 50,000 years ago, an event happened. Humans became self-aware. Very interesting. And it actually created a new domain, which some people call the noosphere, domain of the mind or the psyche. Okay? This is where, in a sense, our mind seems to sit at this time, in this sphere of the noosphere. And it seems to be very specific to humans. Okay? And it has a lot of definition to it of what mind actually means. And it's interesting that evolution now has a new place to work. So consciousness is now the place in which evolution, or mind, is a place where evolution can now occur. Not just physical bodies, but just actually a psychic construct. And in a sense, also the mind too. How does the mind evolve to handle higher and higher levels of consciousness? But what happened during this was a dysfunction, is that the noosphere seems to be separate from the biosphere. What that means is my mind seems to be separate from my body. I'm up here and my body's down here, right? And most people feel this way. Somehow or other, in our culture, we feel up here. This is because at around you think about a child at the age of 1 or 2 doesn't really feel separate from reality. They're just running around. They're running around with their energies and things like that. And as soon as the ego develops, that sense of I, that movement into the prefrontal cortex, this misperception happens. We feel like we're centered up here in our heads or around our heads, okay? And we feel separate from nature, okay? We don't feel quite connected anymore, okay? And it's a misperception because we are. This is still actually in here, but it feels as if it's not. It's just a misperception. And so our spiritual path is this. What are we seeking? We're seeking to get this reconnected. We're seeking for the noosphere, this mind aspect, to come back into the body and inhabit the body. Okay. Does that make sense to those people? Okay. So this is the consequence of this. So part of this is that, again, we have the sense that my body is down here. I'm up here, my body's down here. It becomes an object, right? This is that sense of object permanence. These are my fingers, right? We're taught, these are my fingers. This is my nose. This is my feet. We're actually taught to feel separate. We actually augment the separation by defining a child's fingers as something outside. Here, my fingers are over here. I'm up here, my fingers are over here, okay? But what this also says is my sense of soul somewhere out there, right? We all think our soul's off somewhere out in the universe, right? Our infinite nature is not quite here. We have no idea where it is. People are out there, okay? Everything's out there. And what it is everything that's out there, I can't control. And everything that I can't control is scary. And I become afraid of it because I can't control it. Which means that I'm going to try to control it before it tries to control me, because there's people over there, and those people are objects, which means I can do anything I want to them. Okay? But somehow or other, those people think that I'm an object, also want to do something to me, and I'm going to do preemptive strikes. Okay, so I don't want that. And I also feel separate from nature. So everything seems like it's separate from me. Everything's a world of objects. And you notice that as we do this work, as you go into your full body awakenings, your whole body awakenings, that sense of separateness disappears. You know, I used to tell people, you know, I can't feel nature. I feel so separate from nature. And then I had the whole body realization. I go, oh my God. It's not as if I could actually get into that tree over there. It's not like I can project myself into the tree, but the tree no longer feels separate from me as a sense of the universe. It's just there, okay? But right now, for most people, everything seems like it's out there. And everything out there is scary and afraid. And because of that, this causes violence. If I'm afraid of you and you're afraid of me, I don't trust you, okay? And you're an object. I can do anything I want to an object. This is one of the major causes of violence. People are objects, and therefore you can do anything you want to them.